got his own billiard room.
Yes, it's what do you call it, Kramer?
The billiard room.
No.
The name. The billiard.
Not the billiards. It was. Come on, Rudy. Come on. We call it
The place to be.
The place to be. Yes, it's the place to be.
Then I shall be there.
Now, it's time. Live and in living color.
The Grandy Man can.
Time to play the game.
Well, you always left me satisfied and smiling, so.
That's what she said.
Why do I want this?
Yeah.
Because I want to make bank, bro. I want to get ass. I want to drive a Range Rover.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, it is now time for the Place to Be podcast. And now your hosts, Justin Rosero and Scott Criscolo.
Well, first they love me, and then they don't. Sometimes they do it, and sometimes they won't. So I said to this girl, hey, you get out. And she got to her feet and began to shout, you a dinosaur bro, and you always lie to your friends. You a dinosaur bro.
We're seeing what this guy is really made of. What he is. The greatest professional athlete in the world today. Look at this. He's slammed it down. I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
What is it tonight, Place to Be Nation? This is your host, co-host, I guess, Justin Rosero, along with my fellow host, Scott Criscolo, my partner in crime. Scotty, how you doing tonight?
Good evening, Mr. Rosero. Always good to hear your voice. And boy, we got a juicy one tonight for you.
Yes, and hopefully we earn Rob Houston's respect back because our biggest fan wasn't too happy with our WrestleMania 2 review. I think he thought the show was a little tough for us to get into, and I'm just going to blame Matt for really bringing down that one. But now we have possibly, one of the biggest WWF pay-per-view events of all time. So if we can't get jacked up for this one, then maybe we should just call it quits.
Yeah, I know. I mean, this is one that you just got to get into. I mean, it's not unquestionably, but it's probably one of the three greatest shows in general in the history of professional wrestling. And I'm going through all levels: NWA, AWA, WCW, Heroes of Wrestling. It doesn't matter, whatever it is. This one is the know-all to be-all. And as we go through the podcast, as we go through the legacy of WWE pay-per-views, we will hit other shows like this again, probably by 2001. I'm sure a lot of people speak of WrestleMania 17 with great reverence, and we'll get there, of course. But tonight, this show really might be the crown jewel of the first 15 years of the pay-per-view era. The show, of course, we are talking about tonight on the Place to Be podcast. Mr. Rosero and I speak of WrestleMania 3. It is the one most revered. It has got not one but two matches that probably will never be knocked off pedestals for two different reasons, and just great superstars, great atmosphere. It's very hard to knock, but we'll break it down and let you know what we think of matches and everything in general. And of course, you have plenty of opportunity to let us know what you think. And we'll go through all that at the end of the show. Plenty of opportunities to contact us. But when you first started watching wrestling, Mr. Rosero, which was about 3 years after this, Did you have any idea about this show at all?
To be honest, no, not really. I knew about Hogan Andre, obviously, because that was one of the clips that, everyone always talked about or showed. And I knew about, I think I knew about Savage Steamboat too. But I did rent it probably fairly early into my fandom. So at that point I was aware of it, but I don't think I really had the reverence of it because I didn't really understand what it was. And I think it's one of those shows where if you don't understand the magnitude of it, it's good, but as a kid growing up at that point, just becoming a fan, like WrestleMania 6 obviously is my favorite, but I liked 5 a lot, and 4 a lot, because those are the ones, I tended to rent more. So, but once I got to really understand what the show meant and understand it, I really gained a better feeling for what it was about and more respect for it.
Now I don't really remember this because I'm trying to remember if I actually did rent WrestleMania 4 on a side note. It was 2 tapes, right? Were you actually able to rent both tapes for one, or were you actually renting 2 tapes?
No, it was one. I think it was the same price as all other tapes. It was just 2 tapes in the package.
Okay.
And it actually, for some weird reason, it splits in the middle of the Hogan Andre match, which I never understood. Why they couldn't just do it in between matches, but
that's weird. Actually, in the middle, like mid-move?
It's when Andre has Hogan in the bear hug.
Well, long rest holds. I guess that fits.
It's weird though.
It's like Yokozuna nerve pinches.
Yeah, odd choices.
Yes. But this show, I remember the hype for it. I actually went. My first live show that I ever was at was a key catalyst of the build for one of the big matches on this show, and we'll talk about it when we get there. But I understand our man Rob Houston. WrestleMania 2 is tough to get through. Through no fault of our own, I have to say. I have to pump you. I have to defend you and I. I mean, we tried our best. It was not easy.
That's 2 straight podcasts now to defend ourselves. First against John Walters hating on all our match reviewers, and then now Rob Houston shitting on WrestleMania 2. So that's it. We got to come out guns blazing, I guess.
Speaking of, though, if you PTB Nation members have not had a chance, please listen to that interview. It's tremendous.
Yes.
It's a fantastic podcast, and John is very open, and he did kind of get on us, but I think we defended it well, and this is the kind of pay-per-view where we can do that. Like, I think it's like trying to review WrestleMania 26. I think that's where his, it's kind of tough to review a match 2 minutes after you've seen it.
Yeah, I think once he clarified himself, he was talking more about saying who was carrying a match or who maybe was buried backstage or why a guy won and why a guy lost. He seemed to have more an issue with that than actually just kind of, saying what we thought about the match, how you enjoyed it, and, what you would give it. And I think he felt a little bad probably because he backed off of his comments a little bit once I kind of took it to him. But
I know.
It was good. He was definitely a great guest. And, hopefully once again we'll have him maybe on in the future once this Lucha Libre USA, continues and he's got some more stories he could tell us. So
I'd like to see him get hired by somebody. I did my favorite quote of the show, though, and we'll get into our thing. I just want to say this. I did love the quote when he said, "I'd rather bag groceries than work for TNA."
That was
I
pretty
never
funny.
thought he'd say that. But anyway, listen to that podcast. John Walters, he's awesome. Hurricane is great. Okay, let's close your eyes. For fans that are, this is the few times where I don't mind mentioning my age. I don't like when Mr. LaRue tries to shove it at me, but he was good in the last podcast he was on.
Well, I had to set him straight before we started because I didn't want any fighting on air.
Oh God, I love you, Derek. But he, I am dating myself. I was 13 when the show happened, so I do remember it very well. I watched it on pay-per-view. $30 for WrestleMania 3. $30 back in the day. It didn't go up to 35 till I don't know, 90. What was it? 97 maybe.
Yeah, it was a while. But even more ridiculous is that the VHS tape was like $40 or something. Wasn't it ridiculous?
Yeah, it was crazy. And $8 shipping. Essentially, if you wanted it in the magazine, it was like $50.
Yes.
And the good thing was it didn't take that long to get to video stores. I remember renting it again like maybe 3 weeks later.
Well, I actually bought a copy of this when the old Stop and Shop video stores. I think it was going out of business at the time. And they were selling their copy of this, and I got it for like $6.95. I saw the tag on the cover, so I got the actual Coliseum video release in the clamshell hard case there, and I just remember I loved watching that tape because it was recorded probably in whatever SP, I guess the highest quality, and it was just so like pristine to watch, and the audio was so crisp and clear compared to all my dubs. That I had, it was just like, that was one of the reasons I was, and of course one of the reasons that you probably watch it every time you come over and stay at my house is the awesome quality of that show.
Yes, and I actually remember the swank Mean Gene doing the little thing in the beginning the day before when there was nobody there and they were doing the cables, and it just had that, it still had, even though Vince was obviously trying to go national, there was still that regional feel because Mean Gene was saying things like all the promoters that were from around the country got together with their guys, and that opening piece of that tape is tremendous.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you have the original tape like Justin does, good for you. I did, but it got destroyed in a basement flood. So I don't have my original copy anymore. But I do have that Championship Special Edition DVD that came out, that WWE put out, 2 years ago? No, it was 3 years ago, because it was around the same time as WrestleMania 23, right?
Yeah, it was right before that show, I think.
So it was right. It was in 2007. So, so if you have it, if you have a copy of it, it's one of those shows, and we'll talk more about it when we get to the end. It's one of those shows that you just can throw in any time and never get sick of it. That's just how I feel about this show. But we'll tell you why as we move along. All right, March 29th, 1987. From the Pontiac Silverdome. Now, obviously, Vince, the year before, did that kooky idea of 3 places at once. Well, this time he decided to kind of equal or double or maybe even triple the attendance of WrestleMania 2, just have it all in one building. So what he did was he decided to put everybody in the Pontiac Silverdome, home of the then Detroit Lions, and I think the Pistons still played there too. 78 and 93,000 people. I guess it depends on your point of view.
Yes.
The official total is 93,173, and I'm a mark for that total, and I'll live by it. I don't care who whines and complains about it. There's a guy who says it was really like 78,530, and Vince wanted to inflate it, so he did the actual total and all this other nonsense. But for me, being a mark, and I admit it, to me it'll always be 93,173.
I think Meltzer got the 78,000 from the promoter, the local promoter from that area. But it's widely said that Vince wanted to top the Pope, and I think that was the one that they were trying to beat, or the Rolling Stones or something like that. That he wanted to top, so that's why he went with the 93,000 and set the record. So whatever, it's his world. We just live in it. So
exactly, and we'll be more than happy. It's all semantics when it comes to that.
Yeah, who cares really?
Yeah, exactly. By the way, the record doesn't matter anyway. It has since been broken. The indoor attendance record has since been broken by last year's NBA All-Star game at Cowboys Stadium in Dallas, which had 108,000 people. So if Vince can match that, all the power to him. Closed circuit attendance was about 440,000, so they're still doing closed circuit. The buy rate, now for you younger fans, fans of the last 10 years, you'll never, ever see a number like this. Like now, if you see a number over like 175 or 2 of a buy rate,
it's amazing. If you get 2,
it's ridiculous. This buy rate was an 8.
All right, now I know we've discussed this on your previous show.
Yes.
But I think we should clarify that buy rates back then were different because it's the percentage of the homes that are eligible to receive this. So at the time, obviously, there weren't as many homes that were hooked up to have pay-per-view capability. So an 8 rating, it is good, but, it's not like an 8 today. I mean, 8 today would be astronomical. So, I think you're going to look into it relatively. And maybe anyone out there who has a better understanding of the rating system, can hook us up on our Facebook wall or send us a message and kind of let us know exactly maybe what an 8 then would be equate to now. But I know it's different because the share of households is different.
Yeah, an 8 then probably would be maybe like a 5 now?
No, I think it's probably even lower than that. I mean, think of how many homes have pay-per-view capability now compared to how many had it in 1987. And as we go through the years, we'll see that number slowly tick downwards, and that's a combination of the product cooling off and more homes getting hooked up to pay-per-view capability.
Exactly. Your announcers, obviously Gorilla Monsoon, Jesse the Body Ventura, and this is the show where they set their reputation as the preeminent broadcast team of the era.
Yes.
WrestleMania 1, they were a little obviously still feeling their way around, so they were a little shaky. They were good, but not not to the levels. And obviously 2, they were in 2 separate cities. So this was and believe it or not, I don't remember Jesse. Maybe you've seen as many of them as me as we've been recording the house shows on 24/7, or now that it's called Classics on Demand. But I don't think Gorilla and Jesse even did a lot of house shows. I don't think Jesse did a lot of house shows.
No, he pops up now and then, but it's rare. Gorilla always has an excuse. He'll be like, oh, Jesse's off investigating a storyline, or Jesse's in Hollywood. He'll usually say where he is. He does pop up on a couple, and I'm always kind of caught off guard when he does. But yeah, I'm guessing he just didn't really travel. He probably just did his taped superstar stuff from Stanford, and then traveled for the pay-per-views in Saturday Night's Main Events.
Saturday Night's Main Event, right?
Yeah.
So he probably didn't go to the Garden a lot unless it was something super big. So, all right. So here we go. Let's break it down. 12 matches, and all of them with their own little special taste in them. So our opener. A tag team match, a new team on the scene, the Can-Am Connection, one guy, brand new, Tom Zenk, a.k.a. the Z-Man, and a guy who actually was in the WWF before, and that was Ricky Martel. And you're wondering, well, I don't know, how far back was he? Well, Rick Martel actually won the World Tag Team titles in 80. I'll have to double-check that. 1980. He was tag team champion with Tony Gurria, who I actually met personally because he used to work out at my gym when I was living up in Hamden, which is in the central part of Connecticut. Good guy, Tony Gurria. So he then, of course, he went on to the AWA and actually became the AWA World Champion. He was a guy right under Vern's mold. Not overly snazzy as a babyface, but solid in the ring. Could put on long matches. He was right up Vern's alley. He would defeat Jumbo Tsuruta, and then early in '85, he lost the title to Stan the Lariat Hansen in East Rutherford, New Jersey, which is kind of odd for an AWA show. Tom Zank, new guy in the scene, he's from Minnesota. So Vern probably knew him too. So they both probably came from AWA at that time. Their opponents, two old standbys in WWF lore, Magnificent Morocco, who went from not being at WrestleMania to being in a throwaway opener in WrestleMania 2 to actually being in a legit match, and his partner, Cowboy Bob Orton, who we'll talk about when we get to his former his former bodyguard protector match, I guess you could say. I don't think that came out right, but my point, I didn't want to mention Roddy Piper, but obviously him and Piper were together. We'll explain the backstory of Orton over the previous 6 months when we get to the Piper match. But
yes.
Him and Morocco actually were teaming together often in early '87. They're on a lot of prime times. So
good
this
heel
was actually,
team.
Yeah, they were a very good heel team. I don't know if Fuji was managing both of them.
No, I don't think so.
Were.
I think he.
No?
It's probably by proxy.
Yeah.
But I just want to let you know that Gurria and Martel won the titles on November 8th, 80, and then again on July 21st, 81.
Oh, okay. So they were on for a while then. All right.
Yeah, the first time they beat the Samoans, second time they beat the Moondogs. Then they lost to Mr. Fuji and Mr. Saito, October 13th, 81. So.
Okay. And then Gurria kind of he became a singles jobber, and then Martel went to the AWA. So.
Yep.
Actually, not a bad opener. Crowd obviously hot because they're just jacked from the beginning. Just to mention, before we get to the match, Vince does his welcome to WrestleMania 3, and now there's that emotional story that Vince always tells when he talks about this show, where he feels the presence of his father in the ring while he's doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And he says it's very emotional because this was when he took over the WWF from his dad in 1983. He said, "Dad, I'm gonna put on a show like this and make you proud," and he did. But obviously, his father didn't even live to the first WrestleMania. His father passed away of cancer. So Vince always has that special moment. And then
Aretha Franklin.
Aretha Franklin, thank you, did the national anthem. Or no, I'm sorry, she did America the Beautiful.
Yes. Yeah.
And then and Gorilla actually, not at that show, not at WrestleMania, but he says it, I think, on a prime time, or he says it like on a Saturday main event after that, in not so many words, she was kind of a bitch backstage. And I wish I could remember where he said it. It was either prime time or a Science main event or something of that nature a few weeks or about a month after the show.
Mm-hmm.
And he says that she was less than pleasant to be around. So, and that was kind of funny for Gorilla to say anything like that. So this isn't exactly calling Pat Patterson fat, but we'll get to that legendary moment down the line. Anyway, to the opener. Good match. I always liked Orton. Orton, great wrestler.
Mm-hmm.
Morocco was probably reaching the end of his heel rope.
Yeah, definitely. He's a face by the end of the year. And, I like this one, too. They work a quick pace. I always like that, especially for the opener. You got the hot young tag team that moves at a good pace, and then the heels who could go in the ring as well. Morocco was bulking up, obviously, quite a bit here. So his mobility was not what it was during his prime in, 84, 85 when he had that great heel run as IC champ. But Orton also could always work well. So, these four really actually could have probably been an even better match on a smaller card if they had more time. But as is, it's solid. I like it. It's a good opener. Got the crowd going. The faces win. And Can-Ams, I think, were set for a pretty big push until Zenk opened his mouth and kind of got himself in trouble. But we'll get to that at our next review.
Yeah, and, the crowd, I think, was hot for anything. But it was a good opener anyway. I don't think you could have gone wrong with any choice of the matches on any of the matches on this card to go first. But this was a good one. Good young tag team. I think Vince had high hopes for them, and they get the win. So a nice quick opener. How long was the match? It was like 6 minutes. Let me double check.
Yeah, not even. I don't think
5:36.
Yeah.
And they do a flying crossbody into some type of. I think it was like a schoolboy roll, but he does a high crossbody, and gets the win. So the Can-Am Connection. Tom Zank, Rick Martel, or Ricky Martel, as they say back then, comes away with the win over the Magnificent Morocco and Cowboy Bob Orton. So good opener.
And then in our second match, we had kind of a good feud going on at that point, actually, between Billy Jack Haynes, as Bobby Heenan would always call him.
Yes, he would.
And the Mighty Hercules making his second WrestleMania appearance. So we got into Hercules at WrestleMania 1. Let's give you a little background on Billy Jack. He was mainly worked up in Portland, did a little bit as well in the Mid-Atlantic region before coming up to WWF in 1986, late 86. He always wore the green tights with the Oregon written on them or the yellow tights. And that was pretty much his gimmick. He was from Oregon. He was a tough guy. And the feud here was that him and Hercules would both battle over the full Nelson, whose was better. So they had some pretty good build-up, on the TV leading into this match here where they would, argue over who had the better full Nelson. You had some attacks back and forth. So this match here goes about 8 minutes. They wrestle to a double countout. I thought it was, good for what it was. Two power guys just beating the crap out of each other. Trying to hook the full Nelson on each other. Bobby was good at ringside as always. The highlight to me, is, of course, is Billy Jack Haynes' nasty blade job after the match, where he's just like covered in bright red blood, and the blood just is staining the mat, and with the very light arena with the since it was still sunlight at that point, it was a cool contrast to me in color. I thought, and it really made Hercules look like a tough motherfucker, I guess. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, it really was, and I still don't understand why this match had to end in a double countout. I didn't get it. Unless they had plans for this feud to continue, and then obviously it didn't because Billy Jack, became a pain in the ass, and he was gone by mid-'88. But
I think they just want to keep both guys strong, keep both men's full Nelson strong as well.
Yeah, and I was always curious as to why because then you wonder why they buried Billy Jack so bad at the end of the match, and then they never have I don't think they ever have a blow off. Maybe they wrestle on Saturday Night's Main Event or something, but yeah, it was fine. It was nothing earth shattering. Bobby had a busy night a busy day that day.
Mm-hmm.
I think he had like 4 matches involved him.
Yes.
Yeah, nothing offensive, but pretty good. Crowd was hot. I think Herc was turning into a pretty good badass and a pretty good heel, and although he wouldn't be one very long. And I didn't mind Billy Jack. I heard he wasn't crazy about the tights because he didn't wear the Oregon colored tights anywhere else. When he was in Mid-Atlantic in '85, because him and Wahoo McDaniel were at Starrcade '85 against Ole and Arn, he wore regular, I think, black tights, white knee pads, and I don't think he ever really wore the Oregon colors. I think Vince gave him that kind of as his identity, where he had the leprechaun hat and everybody made fun of him. But I don't with all the glitter on it. But I don't know if he actually wore those colors anywhere else. But it was fine. I thought it was cool. I agree with you. I thought that the visual of the blood and on the tights was pretty cool. But yeah, not a ridiculously awesome match, but again, two power guys who went at it, and then the match ended in kind of a schmoz. So our next match. And I'm so glad as we laid out the format for how you and I were going to do this, I'd end up having to have this match because I'm such a big fan of midgets. A 6-man tag, although if you go by height, it's more like a regular tag. Hillbilly Jim, who I can't believe was not at either. He did not wrestle a match at either WrestleManias 1 or 2.
Well, was he in the Battle Royal in 2? Or no, he was at 4, the 4 Battle Royal, right?
Yeah, no, at 2 he was at ringside with Uncle Elmer against Adrian Adonis.
I don't even want to bring that up.
Yeah, exactly. So I can't believe for one of the most popular guys in the mid-'80s, and a guy they put Hogan on with him on camera. He bought him the black boots and everything was all. He was not at WrestleMania 1, and he was a passerby at WrestleMania 2. But he's in this match. Little Beaver and the Haiti Kid. Now the Haiti Kid, if you remember, as Justin mentioned in our WrestleMania 2 podcast, Haiti Kid was Mr. T's friend, and Piper and Orton shaved a mohawk on him. Well, he's back in this match, and Little Beaver is a legendary midget wrestler with dressed like a little Indian, and his opponent's 6-man tag team, King Kong Bundy, who obviously pushed down the card extensively from the main event at 2 to the third match here, and his 2 midget partners, Lord Littlebrook and Little Tokyo. So, there's your match, and as everyone knows, I am not a big fan of midgets.
In general, midget wrestlers, or in general?
Well, let's put it this way. I don't really have I don't have a problem with midgets as human beings. I didn't think we were getting into a social commentary here, but no.
Do you think they should be classified as human beings?
if they stand on each other's shoulders. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's turning it over. Caught me off guard with that one. I think Matt needs to be part of this conversation.
No.
But I've never been a big fan of midget wrestling. I don't know. Maybe it's just the funny speed of it. I don't know. But I enjoyed this because just the possibility of Bundy just squishing them into poop was a highlight for me. And I was getting annoyed with the Little Beaver like biting their butts and all this other nonsense, and I just wanted to see Bundy destroy them. So
yeah, I mean, it's hokey. It's hokey comedy. I understand why they wanted to, put that on the card to spell things a little bit, but it's really, yeah, I really have no use for midget wrestling either. I never really enjoyed it that much. They should have just done Bundy and Hillbilly Jim in a singles match, most likely, just to put Bundy over, give him a win. But as you said, he was pretty much an afterthought at this point anyway. So, the midgets all turn on him because he squashes Beaver, and that's it. Pretty much, they get the win by DQ. Let's move on because there's really not much to talk about there.
No, there really isn't. Why don't we do this? I'm gonna run up. I'm gonna leave the mic for a moment. Why don't you pump up match number 4? Because one of the guys in this match deserves a very heavy introduction. So why don't you pump that up? I'm gonna leave the seat for just a sec, and I'll be back momentarily.
Okay.
So pump up match number 4 because this next match involves a Hall of Fame wrestler of all time. So go to town.
All right, with Scott gone, I'm just going to go ahead and finish the show. So our next match is Harley Race, who is the legend Scott referred to, facing Junkyard Dog, who's actually, another legend around this time. We already got into him at WrestleMania 1, and he also competed at WrestleMania 2, but here he takes on Harley Race, who was a pretty famous wrestler. He had a run as NWA champion 8 different occasions, dominated that region, wrestled out of Missouri. In 83, he lost to Ric Flair at Starrcade and hung around a little bit, bounced around from territory to territory. In late 86, he decided to finally go ahead and go up to WWF, go to Vince, see what they had in store for him. And it was kind of tough because they gave him that King gimmick where he's going to wear the cape and the crown. So some people may think that was a little bit goofy to give to a former NWA champion. But they do recognize him as a legendary wrestler. Bobby Heenan constantly puts him over. And if you watch a lot of the shows building up to WrestleMania 3, like I've been watching some of the challenges lately on WWE Classics on Demand on the website, and they really did push King as a major player, as a guy who was a legitimate threat, legitimate star. So here, the idea was the loser would have to bow to the other, playing off the King gimmick. JYD, obviously, not something he'd want to do. Proud guy. That's how he was always put over. The match itself is sloppy. This probably could have been a big-time dream match just a few years earlier. But by this point, JYD was on his last legs. He was overweight, kind of slowing down. Harley Race could still go. Only so much he could do, though, with JYD. They only get 3 minutes anyway. Race wins the match. JYD gives him a little bow and then beats the crap out of him. And then he rides out in the cart to a big ovation. Pretty much his last real moment in the sun. He'll be around for over another year, but this is really the highlight, at the end of his run here. And I'll also comment is with Race is another legendary star, and that's Fabulous Moolah, who comes out, I don't know, what she was supposed to be his bitch, I guess. She comes out with him and Bobby.
I have returned, so...
okay, good.
All right, PTB Nation, we hide nothing from our wonderful fans. I was fixing a technical issue, and I believe we fixed it now. So, I caught the tail end of your thing and of your comments. I was always puzzled as to why they had Harley win this match.
I'm not.
I guess at the time, as a mark, you always wonder why heels ever get to win. But they gave JYD his moment anyway. So
yeah, I mean, and JYD really was doing nothing. Harley was someone that they obviously were, trying to push as a threat, and he would get a little run against Hogan on the House Sherwood TV circuit later in the year. So I understand the win here, and Harley was obviously had more of a future at this point than JYD.
Yeah, and the crowd was hot anyway, and you can't have 12 baby faces win, so the heels have to win somewhere.
Yeah, no, that's a good spot. Yeah, JYD doesn't need the win; he's strong enough, to shake off a win like this. He'll be, and this is the theme we're going to hit probably on many of these shows as we go through them. There are always those guys who we just consider bulletproof. We'll see more as we move along. But JOD at this point is clearly one of them. A loss here that means nothing to him or his legacy or what he was. So,
Right.
so that's that. Okay match. Good storyline. Harley gets to win. And that's it. So we move on. Why don't you cue up our next match?
Yeah, that match, again, about as good as it was going to get. And, Harley wins. And he was due for, and I think they were going to give him some title shots, and they do end up actually giving him some title shots with Hogan at the end of 87 into 88 on Science Main Event. And actually, he got injured severely during a title match. So.
Yes.
Next match, another match that had a pretty sexy backstory to it.
Mm-hmm.
The Dream Team, which was still the same team that was tag team champions the year before. Brutus Beefcake. Not the Barber yet. He was just Brutus Beefcake. Or was he the Barber at this point? No, he wasn't the Barber at this point.
No, not until after the show.
Yeah, Brutus Beefcake and Greg the Hammer Valentine. The Hammer, one of my brother's favorite guys of all time. Taking on one of your favorite teams early on in your life, Jacques and Raymond, the Rougeaus. And this was actually their first pay-per-view match. Another good, solid tag match. But obviously this match was more needed for the backstory, which was... Beefcake, let me ask you this. I wonder if Beefcake, what do you think the switch was for? Because they needed to kind of push Dino Bravo, who was actually seconding the Dream Team to the ring. I'm trying to remember if Gorilla actually was hinting that that there was going to be a heel turn coming up here, or if they were planning on kicking Beefcake out of the Dream Team.
Yeah, not really a heel turn, almost more of a face turn by Beefcake. And actually, watching some of those challenge episodes leading into the show, they were already kind of hinting it that, Gorilla would always bitch, why is Dino at ringside with them? He's not a manager, and why is he always hanging around? And Bravo was a Canadian, heavyweight champion. He had bounced around a little bit in WWF before this, but he basically just started hanging out with Johnny V and the Dream Team, and they kind of played off here like Beefcake's a little bit annoyed, that he's involved, and of course then Dino ends up helping them win. Helping Valentine win, so.
Right. So the match is pretty good. I mean, the Rougeaus, obviously one of the better, more schooled and more seasoned tag teams. A good coup for Vince as he was really beefing up his tag division for the next couple of years. And we'd see that at our next pay-per-view podcast review when we talk about a good wealth of tag teams. I mean, Vince was just picking tag teams off left and right.
Yeah, and the Rougeaus are from a famous family as well.
Yes.
The father was a famous booker and announcer up in Canada, Montreal area. So they definitely have the pedigree, and they were definitely a strong team in the ring.
Yes, and they don't win the match here because they were going to be around for a while, and I think obviously they needed this match more to push the face turn of Brutus Beefcake and kind of create the new dream team of the two blonde guys, Valentine and Dino Bravo. So the
now,
dream
how
team
long does that last? The new dream team. Are they together still by Survivor Series?
I think so. Yeah,
I think they are.
So. I think so. I mean, I could bring up. I wonder if it's on a wiki.
Yeah, I'm sure it's there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure they're together through the end of the. Actually, yeah, we have it here. They were going their own in 1988. And at that point, Valentine goes back to Jimmy Hart, leaves Johnny V, and Johnny V kind of fades away by the end of the year anyway.
Yeah, he's not a big managerial presence by the end of '88. So
no, so that's it. Solid match here. Rougeau's job, but that's mainly to get the storyline over. And of course, Beefcake is left alone in the ring when Valentine and Bravo and Valiant all leave in the car and leave him there by himself. So at this point, he was pretty much starting to turn face. But that would be solidified in our next match, which is one of the big 3 matches of the show. And that is Roddy Piper against Adrian Adonis in a retirement haircut match. As if a retirement stip was not enough, we needed the haircut one as well. So I'm going to just kind of read our fun facts in the review because I think it's pretty inclusive of everything. Feud started in October '86 when Piper, who was then a heel, went on vacation, both on screen and off. I believe was he filming a movie at that point? Most likely.
Yeah, I mean, he's probably doing, what was that one? Hell Comes to Frogtown, probably.
They
I would think.
Would he even do They Live, or was that earlier?
No, They Live was later. They Live
okay.
was '89.
Oh, okay,
so,
okay.
Yeah.
So, anyway, he left the Piper's Pit show in the hands of Adrian Adonis. Adonis kind of went crazy with it, changed the whole set, took away all the plaid, added all petunias and flowers. Listen to me, flowers. And every now and then the Rhode Island accent comes out.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So the Piper's Pit at that point became the Flower Shop. Piper came back. He wasn't very happy. He showed up, and Bob Orton, who was his bodyguard, was wearing a pink cowboy hat. He saw the pit had been totally overhauled. He, showed up, started mouthing off, and then Adonis, Orton, and Morocco beat the shit out of him on the flower shop. Things then really turned up the heat a little bit when Piper showed up a couple weeks later and destroyed the flower shop with a baseball bat in a great segment. And that's the one that I think really solidified him as a face. And it's something that was really needed to be done because Piper was being cheered for most of 1986. Everyone just loved him. He was probably the first real, of the modern era, of a textbook case of a heel being turned face by the fans, I think. So then they added in the haircut stipulation. Piper said this would be his last match, win, lose, or draw. A few weeks before the pay-per-view, it was a 6-man tag where Adrian Adonis was teaming with the Dream Team. And I still think this is the most convoluted thing ever. Adonis pulls out a pair of scissors. He's kind of looking at the crowd. And one of the Rougeau brothers turns Beefcake into the corner. So Adonis cuts Beefcake's hair instead of the Rougeau. And Beefcake, who was known as, kind of a preening guy, very vain, had his hair cut by Adonis, so he wasn't very happy. But it was a little hokey the way why Adonis wouldn't notice it was Beefcake. It was just a tough thing to do. So Beefcake, of course, that kind of started the face turn. So Piper and Adonis here. This is a really hot feud. Piper just kind of turned face, and now he's already leaving. So it was one of those things where he was leaving us wanting more. I'd say for sure. Do you agree with that? Having been a fan at the time.
Absolutely. It's amazing how I never thought that Piper, who would come back, I'm trying to look at why he took the time off. It wasn't for Hell Comes to Frogtown because that came out in January of '88, unless they shot it in '86 and it didn't come out till '88. But
he would have just been taking a break.
He might have just taken a breather. But I remember him going on vacation and telling Adrian Adonis, "Can you watch my pit? Well, while I'm gone." And of course, he turned it. Plaid became petunias, as the infamous quote always was. Incidentally, on a side note, did you know 2 things? Number 1, there were 3 sequels to Hell Comes to Frogtown.
I did not know that.
No clue. And there was a Family Guy episode called Hell Comes to Quahog. So just let you know. This kick sticking on the Rhode Island topic. But anyway, I mean, he was. I think every good heel, and I've noticed this over time, and you and I have seen this in the time we've known each other, and at least through history. Every good heel eventually. Fans want to cheer the same attitude. And when we get to the Attitude Era, everybody cheers everybody. But every good heel, after a while, the fans are like, you know what? It's cool that he's a jerk. and I think eventually the same thing happened with Piper. I mean, you just wanted to punch him in the face during that 4-month stretch from, December '84 into, WrestleMania 1. And he did that all through '85 and even in '86 with WrestleMania 2. I just think eventually the fans liked him so much. I think they just wanted him to turn face.
Yeah, it was hard not to. I mean, because even his style was conducive to it, that wild, crazy, brawling style. That's something you want to get behind.
Yeah, and the fans just dug him anyway. He was just that good. And so I knew this match was very special, and I knew it was going to be very emotional. I remember my brother being very excited, and he hated Adrian Adonis because he got so fat. Because my brother liked Adonis and Jesse the Body in the AWA's, the East-West Connection, because he hated Greg Gagne. But anyway, he was pumped about this match, and I had a feeling that Piper was not going to lose because this was one of those matches where the babyface had to win.
Yes, definitely.
And the match itself actually is not that bad. It's actually
I think it's
good.
fun. Yeah, I think it's a very good match for like we said at WrestleMania 2. For someone who was as grossly as overweight as Adonis became, he could still really move in the ring. He never really lost that agility and that selling and that bumping, and it just really works well here. It's, they just really brawl their way around the ring for 7 minutes, and the crowd just really carries things as well because they're just off the hook for this. And of course, we should just mention as well, this is Adonis's final pay-per-view appearance. He hit the indie scene and then would pass away in a car accident in 1988. I think they're Nova Scotia. They hit like a slippery. I think they were trying to avoid a moose in the road or something. Hit a slippery patch of ice, and then I think they drove off a cliff or into a mountain or something crazy. It was him and a few other wrestlers as well. So, and that was it for Adonis, unfortunately. So, he's definitely a talent that could have been so much more. Let himself get out of shape. Then they gave him that gimmick that I think drove him further into depression, where he got even fatter. And he just never really recovered from the adorable gimmick. But solid match here. Piper wins. Instead of cutting Adonis's hair himself, Brutus Beefcake comes out to get revenge on Adonis, and he shaves Adonis bald. So Now Beefcake was officially a face, and this triggered the barber gimmick, obviously. Piper gets a big reception from the fans as he takes off from the ring, and that's it for him for right now. We'll see him again in a couple years, but as of now, Roddy Piper is officially retired.
Yes, and just a sad a note here to the end of Adrian Adonis's life, and this is another reason why, the more stories you hear about Vern Gagne, the less likable he was. He would leave WrestleMania. He would leave the WWF. He would go back to the AWA. Paulie Dangerously would manage him during the rest of 1987. During this stint, he would maintain his adorable gimmick. He'd feud with Tommy Rich. For those who don't know, had the NWA World Title for about the length of a round of the NCAA tournament. He would, but it would lose to Tommy Rich in the final match of the AWA International Television Championship Tournament. He actually lost it to Greg Gagne. Early in 1988, Adonis was scheduled to tour New Japan Pro Wrestling, along with other AWA talent, but an ankle injury kept him from participating. So, in addition to losing the money he would have earned from the Japan tour, while he was injured, Vern Gagne stopped paying him.
No.
And meanwhile, people want to rip Vince, and the guy pays for former wrestlers' rehab when he's not even working for them.
Mm-hmm.
And Vern can't even throw this poor guy a bone while he's hurt. And Adonis asked Vern for some help to kind of help him along, and Vern said no. So, for that whole AWA DVD, when, everyone's whining that the AWA got their talent taken away, now you know why. Adonis tried to go back to the WWF, but by then he was horribly out of shape. And then, sadly, on the 4th of July, 1988, it was in Lewisport, Newfoundland. He was in a minivan with Mike Kelly, whose real name William Arco, Victor Pat Kelly Arco, and Dave Wildman McGigney. Adonis, McGigney, and Pat Kelly were killed when the driver, Mike Kelly, allegedly, you are exactly right, Mr. Azzaro, swerved in order to avoid hitting a moose, and blinded by the setting sun, inadvertently drove into a lake.
Ugh.
Mike Kelly survived with severe leg injuries.
Yeah, I think it's definitely one of the books. I think it's Brett's book. He goes into that a little bit. Talks about Adonis passing away, but yeah, sad ending for a guy that was a pretty big star in the early '80s. Someone I never minded. I liked Adonis. I did not like his match at WrestleMania 2, but I did like Adonis. So
well, he was facing a guy fatter than him,
yes.
and much older.
Yes, Matt's favorite wrestler, the hillbilly asshole Uncle Elmer.
Yeah, exactly. And that horse that had disgusting family. I'm kind of glad Matt is not on this podcast. I don't think I want to listen to the hillbilly midget love that would probably come from that 6-man tag. But yeah, it was a sad end. And Adonis was a good heel, got good heel heat. And you know what? For a guy who ended up getting punished with this gimmick, made pretty good out of it.
Yeah, he definitely did.
So Roddy Piper runs, and it was a very cool moment seeing Piper, wheeling up the ramp with his with the little mini ring and the crowd going crazy. It was a good moment for Hot Rod. Let's put it this way: if we never saw him again, I was fine with it.
Yes, but we will see him many, many, many times.
Yes, many, many times after this, but still a good moment.
Yes.
All right, so we're halfway through the show. Hope you're enjoying it. Let's continue on. Next match. Actually, another good storyline that was built from a long time back. I'll tell you something. I don't know if George Scott was still booking at the time in WWE, but WWF. But I'll tell you something. The storylines for almost all these matches are really well put together. Yes. And this is another one. The Hart Foundation, at the time World Wrestling Federation Tag Team Champions, they defeated the British Bulldogs in January of '87, so a couple months before. They had beaten the Bulldogs to win the tag team straps. And Danny Davis, the former referee, taking on the British Bulldogs, the former champs, and Tito Santana.
George Scott actually left in '86.
Okay, so this must have been, I guess, whoever Vince had booking at the time.
Maybe Patterson. Was Patterson?
Pat was probably writing. Maybe even Blackjack Lanza was probably writing. Maybe Arnie Skolin was probably helping out. I mean, I'm sure there was a bunch of guys back there. So, the backstory of this feud actually goes back over a year. February 8th, 1986. You're thinking, wow, that is a long time ago. Well, if you remember, we were talking in the WrestleMania II podcast about Intercontinental Champion Macho Man Randy Savage, who defeated Tito Santana at the Boston Garden when Savage pulled some knucks or some taped thing out of his tights and whacked Tito in the face with it on a back suplex. The referee at the time was Danny Davis, and that was pure that was just pure luck.
Yeah, they basically were able to go ahead and retcon that whole story back. Because they happen to have this footage of Davis, blindly allowing Savage to cheat his way to the title.
Yeah, exactly. Throughout the year, by the fall of '86, suddenly Danny Davis was starting to get criticized, and his refereeing would be lazy. He started blowing matches, purposely having the baby faces not get counted, and just all this kind of stuff. And Gorilla used to rail on it on primetime, and Vince used to whine about it on Superstars, and then finally in January of '87, in Rochester, New York, clearly Danny Davis, by no accident, costs the British Bulldogs the tag team straps against the Hart Foundation. Well, Jack Tunney, who at the time would come on camera like once every 12 months, comes out and suspends Danny Davis for life from his refereeing duties after he came out into the ring before a match, and I think he punched Joey Morella in the face, or I don't know, he punched some ref in the face or pushed him down or something.
Yeah, he does something all angry. And then Jimmy would reveal him, as the newest member of the Hart Foundation, kind of making it almost like it was going to be a 6-man team in a way. And then, he had the black and white striped referee tights. And I like the storyline here. I always dig the heel ref storylines. I thought they were, pretty good. Him, Bill Alfonso, Nick Patrick. I always dug it. I don't get what their interest was in making him into a wrestler, though. I mean, he wasn't big enough to where he was going to be a star. He was fine for, like, the slimy heel for a little bit, but then before you know it, he's a jobber and then back to being a ref. So it just kind of seemed like an odd decision they had going on.
I kind of agree with you. I don't know if it was just maybe to kind of get some heat on the Hart Foundation, kind of put them over a little bit, and the Bulldogs, and giving them a match. But I don't know. Maybe it was just kind of taking advantage of things. And Danny Davis kind of looked like a dick, so I mean, maybe it just fit for that time. But if anything, it was almost like when Virgil, when we go ahead a few years, he gets his 2 or 3 months in the sun, and then he ends up becoming a jobber. So,
yep.
I think just for this moment, it's fine. But maybe they should have kind of phased him out, or just made him if they were going to make him a good wrestler, they should have done something legit with him. Maybe
exactly.
Make him a tag wrestler, get another guy to tag with him, or make him legit instead of after this match he becomes pretty much nothing more than a hump, really. So, but the match itself is fine. It's actually very good, and he's fine in the match. He's not in it much.
Yeah,
but,
in this role he's fine. I just didn't get why they wanted to make him, a legit wrestler after this.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. What I would have done was maybe found a guy to kind of hook him up with, and make a tag team out of him or something. I don't know, but obviously he's hidden, he's protected. Everybody in the team wants to beat the hell out of him because all 3 of them were lost belts because of him.
Right.
And they protected him. So it was a good heat magnet match, and this was a good match for the heels to win.
And also,
Hart Foundation were hot at the time.
Yep. I was gonna say we should just take a moment too, because I don't think we really got into the Harts at 2. We said we're gonna do it here.
Right.
Bret Hart and Neidhart both trained with Stu in the dungeon. Up in Calgary. Obviously, Bret was his son, one of 12. Bret was a big-time piece of Stampede Wrestling. Once he really got his legs under him, never the best promo guy at this point, but still a tremendous in-ring athlete. When Stampede was bought by Vince, he and the British Bulldogs and Neidhart all ended up... Well, Neidhart was already in WWF, but the other 3, ended up getting signed by Vince. They hooked up Anvil and Bret. They had a lengthy feud with the Rougeaus, a lengthy feud with... the Bulldogs during this 1986, early 87 stretch. And of course, the tag matches around the country were tremendous between the 4.
Absolutely. Anytime you got 4 guys trained by the same people, I mean, and Stu, we're not talking about, chopped liver. Although in the dungeon long enough, he'll turn you into chopped liver. And it's funny, you think about it, you're like, I don't know, how can you really think that Jim Neidhart was actually in the dungeon? Could you just see Neidhart with his gut like lying there while Stu bent his elbow up his ass? I mean, I just can't see that.
He wasn't in too bad a shape actually early on. I think during that point, because he was coming off a career in football, a career in track where he was a big shot putter, I believe. So he was an athlete. I mean, he was a legit athlete.
He was married to one of the sisters.
Right.
That didn't help.
Yeah, and he would let himself get out of shape, obviously, as the years go on. But like I said in our last podcast for WrestleMania 2, I actually thought when you watch some of these promos, around this time, he was really carrying the team talking. He's a much better talker than I think anyone ever really gave him credit for.
I agree with you on that. I agree with you 100%. And Brett was obviously the workhorse, and his legacy and legitimacy, credibility would grow with every show.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish we had a prize. I wish we had a prize we can give away. Maybe somewhere down the PTB line, we'd have a prize if anybody can actually come up with the 12 Hart kids in order from oldest to youngest.
Oh, all right. I was going to say, I think I could probably do all 12. I don't know if I could do them in order.
Well, we'll give you a hint. Smith's the oldest, and Owen was the youngest.
Yes.
So, and then of course there were 4. Was it 6 and 6?
No, I think there was more guys and boys and girls.
8 and 4, I think, right? 4 sisters?
Something like that.
I think it's 8 and 4, yeah. Obviously there's only like 9 living now, right? Owen's passed away.
Dean
passed away.
I think
all
that's
right,
it.
it's only 2. Yeah, no, we keep thinking Bulldog and Pillman and all those other guys, but obviously they weren't family. Well, they were, but to a certain extent. I always love, on a side note, when you have the Heart and Soul DVD and you see Pillman there for Thanksgiving. It just seems so weird that he was just there,
Or Brockus at the Father's Day dinner.
Yes, exactly.
But we should mention, too, here that Dynamite was already starting to break down. He actually could barely wrestle in that tag team title change match. In early '87, he got knocked down before the match, and then that's what happened to the Davis Screwjob, where he let the Hearts keep double teaming Davey Boy. So by this point, he was kind of getting himself back together. He had said, I think he says in his book, he wouldn't. There was no way you're going to miss a WrestleMania payday. So he drags himself into this match, and it's good stuff. They lose, obviously. Davis pins Davey after they use the megaphone. So, and Tito's in here. I think they were basically just playing off a little bit off the Savage match and a little bit off Tito just kind of being, the face that wanted to right the wrongs. Yeah, so that's it. Good match. Yeah. And that leads into our next match, which is basically effectively a squash to get over. One of our new talents here is Butch Reed defeats Coco Beware, of course, an all-time J-fave.
That is right. Yes, as you just to kind of let's preface that a bit, because as we go through our wonderful podcast in the history that is the PTB, we will mention many J-faves. J-faves are wrestlers, characters that are near and dear to the heart of Mr. Rizzero, and you may think, really, why him? Well, it doesn't matter why him. That's just how he is. And
I just like him. That's it.
He has great, and there will be great wrestlers. Trust me, I know all the J-faves, and he does have superior. You have excellent wrestlers and excellent athletes on your J-fave list, and there are some that you just kind of scratch your head. But and we all have guilty pleasures, some more than others.
Coco was the man, though. Yeah, you know what? At least I'm not like Matt with the hillbilly fuck faces. Is my favorite.
Yeah, and Bastion Booger. He wants the Mike Shaw trilogy. He wants a Mike Shaw DVD. I think it'd be a good coaster. But anyway, Coco was brand new. Yes. And Coco actually had a pretty good legacy going into this match. I mean, he worked with Lawler in Memphis.
Mm-hmm.
He was in the PYTs, Pretty Young Things, with
Norvell Austin.
Now,
did they use the Michael Jackson "Pretty Young Thing" song at that point? Was that song out?
Pretty young. Yeah. Because Thriller came out in '83.
Okay.
That was like '84, '85. He was there. They might have. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
no one. Lawler, I don't think, cared about copyrights back then.
No, no one did. I mean, and really, that stuff didn't matter with. I think there's a law out there for stadiums where you can play songs in arenas.
Yeah.
So I'm sure they've used it. I'm guessing that's where they got the name probably from.
Yeah, exactly. As for Butch Reed, he was working through NWA. Slick. Let's talk about Slick, the Slickster, brand new, as you heard in our sexy open. Slick, brand new guy on the scene as well. Both of them actually, they were a package deal.
Mm-hmm.
They both were banished from the Central States territory in the NWA, which is actually, I think that's Bob Geigel's promotion. They lost a match to Bruiser Brody and had to leave town, and so they showed up in the Northeast. And this match, I don't know if I would have put, this was a match for me. I would have had like a double counted or double DQ. I mean, would you already had Coco Job? He barely was even there.
Yeah, but he was. I think the writing was on the wall for him. Short guy, energetic. You could tell he was going to be one of the guys that was always in the opener, helping put other guys over. I think he was basically brought in to be a jobber to the stars. I don't think there was any doubt about it. But just to mention what Slick's role is when he first came in, Freddie Blassie towards middle to end to 86, was starting to have a little bit of failing health, so he wanted to get off the road. So what they did was they had him basically give up, his wrestlers and sell them off. So Slick came in and took over a few of them, took over Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov. That was the main one, and then a few months later, debuted the Natural Butch Reed. Now, of course, we should say the little wink-wink gimmick is that they call him the Natural but he had blonde hair, dyed blonde hair, so he was
Yeah,
not so
exactly.
natural, and his
Yeah, exactly.
body was probably not very natural either. But
there are a few guys at this show that weren't exactly natural.
yes,
So, um, yeah, I mean the match is fine. I mean Butch Reed wins cheating. I have a lot of venom for Butch Reed for other reasons. We'll get into those reasons in our next review podcast.
Mm-hmm.
One reason why I absolutely hate, and maybe one of our future and newer new contributors to the place to be, who was supposed to join us tonight, but unfortunately he couldn't get out of work. He did let me know that he wanted to join us tonight, but we'll let you know who that is when he makes his debut. He loves giving me guff about about a guy involved in this whole storyline with Butch Reed and somebody else, but the match is just there for another match to fill the card.
Exactly.
It's starting to get dark. It's actually starting to get that look now. As Justin said, the show started. When the hell did the show start? 4 o'clock? 3 o'clock? What time did this pay-per-view start? I think it started at 4.
and even Central Time would have been 3.
Yeah, so I think it started 4 o'clock. Yeah, it did. I think it was 4 o'clock Eastern Time here where we live in the Northeast. So there in Detroit, it was 3 o'clock. So right now it was probably about, 5:15. So it was getting a little darker. We were still in, we're still in the tail end of winter, the beginning of spring. So it was getting a little darker, and you're getting that feeling now. The show is really starting to get a very special feel to it now because the light was not coming through the dome ceiling. And this was the first match where you kind of see that.
Mm-hmm.
But like Justin said, I guess you're right that Coco was here to kind of make the kids happy, and the kids could care less who wins and loses. That's really what it comes down to. And I mean, maybe this is another thing we talk about with the current product on another show, another podcast, that I think when you're young and you like certain characters, I don't think you really care who wins and loses as long as you get entertained. And, he came out with Frankie and he talked to the fans and everything. I don't think they really cared whether he won or lost in the long run.
Well, especially a guy like that wasn't portrayed to be a major contender.
Right.
It was fine. I think. I think the point was to get Butch Reed to win. But you know what? That match was really just to kind of cool the crowd down before one of the true, co-main event. Piper Adonis was one. Our main event's the other. And then this is the third piece of the trinity of the show. So why don't you bring that out?
Well, it is a treat. It is a treat for me to do this match because still, and we're now... as of this podcast, which could be listened for posterity somewhere in the future, it is March of 2011. Only one match surpasses this one for me as my favorite match of all time. We are, of course, talking about the Intercontinental Championship match between the title holder, the Macho Man Randy Savage, who's actually a pretty good Intercontinental Champion. One thing that Jesse always used to say, and he said it later on, a few years later when he would become world champion, is that Savage was in a lot of title matches. He would always be on shows, always be on house shows, would always be on primetime, always on TV. So one thing he had to say about Savage, he worked pretty hard. He was always on camera. He was a character that Vince wanted to have on a lot, and he did when he won the title. His opponent, a guy who certainly earned this spot based on popularity alone, and that was, of course, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Now, where did this start? The previous November, the two had a match, and honestly, this feud, Justin, goes back to even 85.
Yes.
Because these two had house show. Everyone thinks this match is good. You should watch some of the house show matches in 85. Forget even 86. These two were wrestling in 85, and were tearing the house down.
Yes, and they've been showing a lot of these matches on either Classics On Demand or the Classics.com. There are a lot of matches now that they've unleashed throughout their, from their library and their archives, really showing that these two did have more than just this one great match.
And if you can get one of our toughest trivia questions, we'll give you Justin's username and password. No, I'm only kidding. No, just kidding. But for those that should get it, it's not expensive. It's $4 a month for the Classics.
On the website, and they have a lot of stuff on there. I mainly use it to, and I think you do as well, to listen to stuff while we're at work. And I definitely get my $4 a month, probably within one day, just watching episode of WCW Saturday Night, and then a old challenge, and I'm good for the month. I've already made my money up. So
honestly, that's what it is. $4 a month. Today I watched 5 WrestleMania matches to get me pumped up, and an episode of Superstars, and I'm usually pretty good. Mm-hmm. So just as a side advertisement. if you have the $4 a month to spend, get the classics.com. It's definitely worth it.
That's one less Subway sandwich a month. You can do that.
Exactly. Who needs the chicken and the bacon? But anyway, so anyway, this feud starts in November of '86 officially. They have a match. I think it was in the Mid-Hudson County Civic Center. It was close by. It was in the Northeast, and they're fighting for the title. They're wrestling outside the ring, and Savage drapes Steamboat over the railing, the metal railing, and did his typical double axe handle off the top rope right into the back of Steamboat's neck, which essentially drove his throat into the railing. Then he throws him he brings him back into the ring. The match has already ended. Savage is DQ'd. He grabs the ring bell. And I remember watching this going, wow, this is kind of crazy. I've never seen that. I mean, I've seen chairs and stuff, but the bell? No one ever takes the bell. And it's true, no one ever took the bell. And he gets to the top rope, and he drives the bell into Steamboat's throat.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember my brother was bugging out. And he's a big Savage guy. But he was like, I can't believe this. You know, we're all still marks, even 12 years old. You can't help it, 13 years old. And I'm like, wow, I can't believe he just did that. And the place, people were throwing stuff. I mean, it was nuts. And let me tell you something. Nobody sold. There aren't many baby faces that sell injuries, but no one sold an injury. If you go back in history, no one sold an injury better than Ricky Steamboat. I mean, every time he got hurt, it was like he got his arm chopped off, and he's like rolling around on the gurney, and he's like, and he's trying to choke and cough and everything, and it was insane.
And of course, we get some of the great vignettes of so a little hokey, but still good. Him trying to go to the speech therapist, and he's trying to speak, and he can't, and they did all that kind of stuff while he was injured.
Yeah, no, it was pretty funny. And then, in the December 14th, 1986, Saturday night's main event taping at the Hartford Civic Center. And folks, this is a big moment here on the PTB, because that was my first official live show. At the age of 12, for Christmas, my father got my brother and I tickets to, amongst other things, but we got tickets to the Saturday night's main event taping in Hartford. So believe it or not, as much as I lived literally 5 minutes away or 10 minutes away from the New Haven Coliseum, which was my home base, just like the PCC is Justin's home place, my actual first live wrestling show was at the Hartford Civic Center. And that main event that night was the infamous Hulk Hogan versus Paul Orndorff world title match in the cage, where we had another Danny Davis moment. Danny Davis, both guys hit the floor at the same time. Both guys had their hands raised, all controversy. My brother was getting popcorn thrown at him because he was the only guy who wanted Orndorff to win. But Steamboat came out of the tunnel, first time he was live in a couple months, and Savage was about to drop the bell on George the Animal Steel's throat, and Steamboat comes out and saves him. The place is going crazy, and then the tension started to burgeon and started to pull over, really started to bubble over, and then finally this match was booked, and everyone was just so looking forward to it. So, I mean, the tension and the excitement, and every week we had the reports and Steamboat talking like this for like 7 straight weeks. It was crazy. And Savage with Elizabeth, and this is where I think you really, and obviously would love your comments. This is the match for me where Savage became a star.
Oh yeah, easily. Yeah, it was growing. This is where he finally eschewed the Memphis stuff and really started to bring the work rate that he would be known for. And he, I guess, will make him number 2 on the J-Fave list. But unfortunately, we'll have to take one off because I hate George Steele, as I've talked about.
Yes.
So it's a negative one. But I thought, I get why he was in this match. They were trying to tie together the whole thing with him and Elizabeth, why he was at ringside, and to give Steamboat back up. But if there's one negative about this match, and it's really nitpicking, I just hate that he plays a role in the finish. I wish Steamboat did it on his own. It's only because I hate Steele. It's not that I am obsessed with having clean finishes or anything like that. But these two guys go all out. 15 minutes, meticulously planned. Their goal was to steal a show. They clearly do it. Savage, like you said, really emerges as a major in-ring star. Steamboat, this elevates him as well from just being a really solid hand to one of the top players in WWF. So tremendous show. And as I put in the review, this pay-per-view broke attendance records and drew the audience because of the main event that was still to come. But this pay-per-view is mainly remembered as legendary because of this match here. This is really the first great WrestleMania match.
Yes, and it's, in my opinion, And for those that disagree or want to back it up, please email us. Say it on our Facebook page. For me, this is my favorite, and I've got a lot of great Ric Flair matches as well, but this is probably my favorite WWF match of all time until Shawn Michaels and The Undertaker from WrestleMania 25. That match surpassed it, but not by much. This match still means a lot to me because it was the first match that I just watched and went, oh my God, this is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And for a 14-minute match, 23 2 counts.
Yeah, it's crazy.
That's insane. Savage had 16 of them. My brother and I counted. And Ricky Steamboat was one of the few. My brother was a big heel fan. He loved all the bad guys. He hated Hogan. But the one babyface he did always like was Steamboat, just because my brother loves work rate. He loves guys that go in the ring and give it their all. My brother was an NWA fan by nature, so. But this match, just back and forth, and the commentary. This is where officially, for me anyway, Gorilla and Jesse put their stamp on being one of the 2 or 3 greatest broadcast teams of all time. This match, and obviously it gets better towards the end.
This is an example though of where Gorilla. He was a little bit much, isn't it? Is this the match where Savage does the clothesline and Gorilla says he should be disqualified for it, and Jesse goes off on him? I mean, Jesse was great,
yes.
but
yeah, no, because Gorilla's like, it was incidental. Like there was a lot of time. You'll see a lot of times over the next 2 or 3 years where Gorilla kind of paints himself into a corner that he really can't get out of.
Yeah,
like
he
over baby faces it, and he kind of gets him caught.
Yeah, he's like, oh, he's intentionally trying to hurt the man, and Jesse's like, of course, that's the point.
Yeah, and he's like,
But yeah, it's a tremendous match. If by some random chance you're listening to this show, you're a big enough fan to listen to the show, but have never seen this match, go check it out. Definitely a 5-star match. First one in pay-per-view WrestleMania history. So
yeah, and there's really not. The one difference between Justin and I, and actually our good friend John, who will be a future contributor to the Place to Be podcasts, the two of them can't stand. He likes George Emanuel Steele about as much as you do. It doesn't faze me, believe it or not. It doesn't faze me that much. I still think the match is.
Oh yeah, I mean, I would never dock the match because of it. I just personally don't like him.
Yeah.
I wish he wasn't.
No, I understand. No, I understand, of course. But and this is one of the examples where Jesse spun the story so well. It was almost like you were rooting for Savage to win, retain it, because Jesse just made the case so legit that, wow, Gorilla's really, not making any sense, and it was really awesome.
Yeah, and Savage was really like Jesse always was a big Orndorff guy, earlier on, but now Savage was his guy now. Even when Savage turns face, he still sides with him. So Savage was his main guy, along with Orndorff and a guy that debuts later in the year as well, would become his main guys that he'd always defend no matter what. So
yeah, speaking of wait till we get to WrestleMania 5. Oh my God, I think Jesse wants to marry him. But yes. Anyway, again, Justin is exactly right. If you know us very well, and you know us from our pay-per-view reviews, our online reviews, whether on our message board or you've seen it on the Blog of Doom or on Graham Coffon's site, Justin and I will never tell you to make you watch something. And there are certain other internet writers, and I don't name names, I'm not like that, who, well, I am, but I won't do it here, who tell you, don't watch this, don't bother. We're never going to tell you that. Put on anything you want. You want to watch a 1995 King of the Ring? Maybe it's better than watching paint dry. But on the other hand, you have to watch this match. You have to. You have to watch it. If you have a different opinion of it, you have a different opinion of it. But you have to watch this match. It's that good. So.
And the next match is equally as good. No, probably not. It is Honky Tonk Man.
Personality-wise, maybe it is. Personality-wise, maybe it is. But obviously not work rate. But go ahead.
Yes, it is the debut of the Honky Tonk Man pay-per-view debut. Wayne Ferris taking on Jake Roberts, who now has turned face. Throughout the 1986, Jake was still a heel. Had some matches with Hulk Hogan where he was actually starting to get cheered over Hogan on house shows, and actually I think one was even taped and they never aired it. So they said, you know what, that's it, we can't have this. They turned Jake face. And it happened on an episode of The Snake Pit when he had Honky on as a guest. Honky smashed him with a guitar after Jake kind of busted his balls a little bit. The problem is, the one that they used, and if you watch the clip you can see it and hear it, is that the guitar was legit. It wasn't gimmicked. So it really fucked up Jake's neck. And I think it was one of the injuries that kind of ended up leading to a lot of his painkiller and drug use later on. It would, force him to take some time off later on in the 80s as well.
If you watch it, it hurts.
Yes.
No give.
Honky is actually a cousin of the legendary Jerry Lawler. Started in Memphis, came here as an Elvis impersonator. He started off as a face, but he just never really got over. The fans never really cared about him. So they did a campaign where they asked the fans to write in and vote whether or not they like him. The answers were overwhelmingly no, so they ended up just turning him heel. And the rest is history with him. That's pretty much it. He became an asshole. Very unlikable character. But he was great at what he did. He was, brought the heat. He was arrogant, annoying with his singing and his Elvis and his preening and everything else. So he's a very easy guy to hate, but he was definitely great at his job.
Yeah, and it was good because his babyface outfit was these weird purpley teal tights with suspenders. So it was good that he ended up turning heel anyway because that outfit was hideous.
Yes.
Let me ask you something. Do you think I've always wanted to ask you this? I don't think you and I have really talked about this. As I'm reading, as you were talking, as you were going over the backstory, a tremendous job. Do you think Jake was one of those guys who just automatically is bulletproof? He just created himself bulletproof from the get-go, kind of like Piper.
Yeah, I'd say as soon as he turned face, any guy to me that is turned face by the fans like that, pretty much becomes bulletproof because they obviously clearly want to cheer him. And a guy like Jake who has such a strong, and Piper, they have such strong characters, such strong promo skills, and they were able to connect with the crowds, just with the way they spoke and the way they, just really play to the audiences. And I think those guys are the ones that always end up being bulletproof because they do have that connection where the fans are always going to be on their side no matter what.
Right.
Win or lose. So here he does lose, and it was actually deemed a pretty big upset at the time because Honky wasn't seen as much of a threat for anything. And I think a lot of people probably thought Jake would just kind of squash him, but Honky does steal the win. Of course, in Jake's corner was Alice Cooper. Heavy metal star. So
yes.
So you would think with Alice Cooper there and everything else, you'd think Jake would easily get the win, but it doesn't. But after the match, him and Cooper get the Damien the Snake, and they throw it on Jimmy Hart, so they get their heat back a little bit. But
again, another case where it was okay for the heel to go over. Kind of need to, if you're going to turn a guy, if you're going to make all this effort to turn a guy heel, you might as well have him win a big match and kind of, keep it going.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's why I asked that because I felt, obviously didn't phase Jake that he lost this match, and obviously Jake's WrestleMania record is not the greatest.
Right.
When we get to the end of his run, but Jake was just always a great character, and here he was a huge babyface and tough loss. But again, just like JYD, he gets his little heat back, and the crowd doesn't care whether he won or lost.
Mm-hmm.
So good match there, as good as it could be.
Yeah, decent.
Next match. No, good.
That's it. That was the same decent match.
Yeah. Next match, decent again. This was kind of a throwaway. I think this is more to introduce another new character.
Your favorite.
Oh, good God. Why do you got to start? If Rotella was here, it'd be a lot different. But the team is Nikolai Volkov and the Iron Sheik, who are definitely at the end of their rope by this point, taking on the Killer Bees, another new team that we hadn't seen yet. Were they in it? Oh, no, wait a minute. No, they were the Battle Royal at 2, I think, right?
Yeah, I remember talking about them. Yep.
Yeah, they were Jumpin' Jim Brunzell and B. Brian Blair. They were at the Battle Royal at 2, taking on Nikolai and the Iron Sheik. 5-minute match, nothing fancy, back and forth. But the big thing here was the debut of a new guy. After the liquidation, if you will, of the UWF and Mid-South, obviously the promotions owned by Bill Watts, when they were swallowed up by the NWA, by Mid-Atlantic, the Crockett's, some guys stayed in NWA, like Sting obviously debuted from there, although he doesn't debut till another year from then. Not Dr. D. Schultz, I'm sorry. Dr. Death. Guys
I got the American flag.
Your boy.
Did you really put off that god-awful WrestleMania tape? Oh, for God's sakes. Oh, good Lord. The guy we're talking about, might as well just say it, is Axel Jim.
It's coming for you, Scott. Oh!
Feel bad for all the slobber on that microphone. And boogers and God knows what else.
Oh, boy.
He makes his debut here. He interferes but he's a good guy. But he can interfere. That's fine. Go ahead, Gorilla. Try and explain that. I'm just going to say it now. We'll be very quick when we get to our main event. This is the reason I just get so pissed off. As a kid, you're like, why is Gorilla get all pissed off at guys that interfere with big weapons? Meanwhile, this big booger-filled moron would run in, swing a 2x4, and everybody's all happy about it. I just don't understand it. I never understood it. And it was very hard to explain. And just I couldn't stand him. I thought he was ugly. And he drool all the time and booger. I was just like Jesse. I couldn't stand looking at him. And he had like the lazy eye, and it was just a big mess. I just couldn't stand him. And then everybody tells me the same thing over and over again. But you should have seen him in Mid-South. oh, he's a big work rate guy, and him and DiBiase had this big feud, and we'll talk about DiBiase when we get ahead. And he had all these great feuds and everything. Well, you know what? Until they yank it out of Bill Watts' wife's dowry, I don't want to hear it. So the only Jim Duggan I know is a big slobbering oaf.
Now, is it in his wife's dowry or is it in Raven's Bowery?
It's at the front door of Studio B. Yes.
Oh, okay. So,
But,
yeah, nothing much here. Like you said, it was just to get Duggan over. The other point to mention too is that this is Iron Sheik's final pay-per-view for a little while. Him and Volkov, former champions, they get the win here by DQ when Duggan shows up. But in a stroke of genius, Duggan and Sheik were riding together on the Jersey Turnpike. Had some coke in their car, got pulled over. Story broke, so both guys actually got fired. Vince would bring Duggan back shortly after, but Sheik would be gone for a while.
Yeah,
He'll return later, but
I wouldn't bring. Oh, no wonder Sheik's angry. He got to be fired, and this moron got to keep his job. Let me find out what that. Let me see if I can get that exact story because it was more than coke. It was a lot of stuff.
Yeah, they were a mess. So
here we go. May 1987. Jim Duggan and Sheik were pulled over by New Jersey police on the Turnpike, suspecting Duggan of driving drunk. No, that's just the way he is. After a search of the vehicle and the persons, police discovered Duggan was high on pot and Sheik was high on coke. They found coke in the vehicle and roach clips. Duggan received a conditional release. Sheik was on probation for a year. The mini scandal that erupted after two in-ring enemies were found drinking and doing drugs together. Great. Sheik got released and Duggan got let go too. Both came back, but Sheik ended up leaving again. So.
Yeah, Sheik doesn't last too long.
No.
So that's it. Okay match. The Bees. We're a solid team, obviously. Sheik and Volkov done, and your boy. That's all he has left to say is. And now,
I feel bad for those producers. Swear to God.
No, you know who produced that? Was Simon Cowell produced that album. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
That
Did
album,
really?
Yeah, that album was actually really big in England. It was like it ranked on charts or whatever the friggin' Billboard England is or whatever the equivalent is.
Yeah, Hot 100 or whatever the heck it was.
Yeah, it actually charted on that, and Simon Cowell was the producer of that album.
Yeah, well, you know what? That could not have possibly been a single off it. So I think the Mr. Perfect rap probably did better. But anyway,
all right, that's enough of that. Let's get to the meat of the show, the main event, the match that drew 93,000 to the Pontiac Silverdome. Yep. Hulk Hogan putting his world title and his undefeated record on the line against Andre the Giant and his undefeated record. I believe they were both pushed as undefeated, right, at this point?
Yes, okay. They were. Yep.
3 years as champion, a long time.
It's a long time. This was an interesting storyline, and I never saw it coming. And when you're watching the prime times, and this is the best part of having 24/7, it's just so great.
Mm-hmm.
There's a back and forth thing. No, you hate that all these promotions, aren't around anymore. But the fact that Vince was smart enough to buy all the footage,
yes,
is just is beautiful. Because now this footage obviously he doesn't have to buy because it's his. But the fact that they have an outlet like 24/7 or Classics.com, you don't. I mean, you never remember a lot of these prime times and superstars and challenges. But the things that piece together this storyline blows you away. January 17th. Episode of Piper's Pit, and the best part about this storyline was Piper was right in the middle of it. So even though he had his own feud going on, the fact he was in it made it even more legit. Hulk Hogan gets a trophy from the WWF for being world champion for 3 years. It was exactly 3 years. He of course won it on January 23rd, 1984. Andre, comes out. No, he didn't come out. Thank God. Andre comes out, shakes Hogan's hand, and apparently he shakes it hard, and you see Hogan wince.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I never noticed that. I might have to go back and look at that. Apparently, he shakes Hogan's hand a little harder than normal, and Vince and Hogan shakes his hand like, oh wow, Andre, a little tough there. And Andre says what you just said: 3 years world champion. It's a long time. Mm-hmm. And he walks off, and you're like, oh, it's kind of odd. Meanwhile, on a side note, at the end of night, because of the revealing news, Andre was a member of the Machines If you remember the Machines tag team in 1986, these three alleged Japanese guys that were all masked, Andre was suspended for something. And so he couldn't wrestle as Andre, but he was a machine. He was the giant machine. And apparently there was a match at some house show where Andre's mask came off. Bobby Heenan turned him in, and Andre had like a year's suspension or lifetime or something. I think it was a lifetime suspension.
Yes, lifetime.
Because he cheated. Yeah, it was kind of like the Dusty Rhodes Midnight Rider thing in the early '80s in Mid Atlantic. I remember right after the New Year there was a hearing in Toronto because that's where Jack Tunney's office was, and Andre's suspension was lifted. And Bobby was at the meeting, and Gorilla on primetime was trying to get out of Bobby. Well, what the heck happened? And Bobby wouldn't say. He was very vague. Very interesting. When you're a kid, you don't know what the hell's going on, but very interesting.
Yeah, if you watch it now, like Gorilla they really did a good job on those shows. Just throw a commentary on matches and in the studio, just kind of throw away lines almost, really pumping that up. Like, why were you there? What's going on? Were you trying to keep him away? And Bobby was all very coy about the whole thing.
Exactly. So after this pit, the following week, Hogan decides to give in return for the support of his friend. He gives a trophy to Andre for being undefeated for 15 years. Now, in all reality, folks, Andre is not undefeated. Andre, I'm sure, wasn't pinned a lot in his career, but there's matches on DVD and on tape where he's lost by count out, lost by DQ. Very rarely has Andre have been pinned. That's probably for sure. But he's not undefeated. But of course, Vince likes to suspend disbelief. So Andre's been undefeated for 15 years, and his good friend Hulk Hogan buys him a trophy and honors him on the following week's Piper's Pit. Well, if you look, the cheap bastard Hogan is, the trophy's like 9 inches shorter than his. And then Hogan starts yapping and listen to me, I'm starting to sound like Jesse now. And Hogan starts talking, and Andre's got this look on his face like, shut the hell up. And Andre suddenly just walks away.
Yep.
And it doesn't say anything, just walks away. Puts the trophy down, walks away. Following week on the pit, Piper's like, oh, we got to find out what's going on. Jesse comes out. And we all know Jesse, master of the shit stirrers.
Yes.
He goes, something's going on. Andre's pissed. But I'll bring Andre back next week. Can you deliver Hogan?
You deliver Andre, I'll deliver Hogan.
You betcha, boss. And they came out. Well, Hogan comes out February 7th, 1987. Probably the most memorable Piper's Pit in history. Out comes Andre with Bobby Heenan. And I remember watching this. And folks, let me tell you something. You may not think it's a big deal now.
Can't be so, Andre. Listen to me, day one, man, when I set my eyes on you, brother, you're the reason I got in professional wrestling. You were like a god to me, a role model. You can't be here with him, man. You're the one that took me all the way from nothing to the world's title. Andre, you can't be with him, man. Let me tell you. No, wait 1 minute. You're the one that taught me, man, about respect for the fans, about helping the kids. You're the one that taught me about good sportsmanship. You set the mold for me to follow, man. What are you doing here with him? I'll tell you what he's doing here with me. He's sick and tired of you and what you stand for. Let me tell you something, Hogan. You're the one that for 3 years as world champion used this man. You're also the vermin that made this man. I can't tell you what I think about it. You used him, they gave him a trophy. But no, that wasn't good enough. It was a littler trophy than yours. But you had to walk out and steal that moment. You're so jealous of this man, you can't stand it. This is the man for 15 years that is undefeated. But did you ever what? No, man, you're wrong. You're wrong. You're wrong.
Now, this, too, I would argue is, Bobby at this point was a great manager, solid heel manager. This is what really elevated him to, like that promo right there was probably his first really true great WWF promo where he really brought the heat. You could feel the passion, the whole thing with Andre, how much he hated Hogan, and that would become obviously a long running feud, him and Heenan. But really, that was like where Bobby finally snapped and like broke out as a major star.
Absolutely, there's no doubt about it. And the rest of that promo, I mean, I'm just getting shivers now. It's getting me back to when I was 13. I mean, that's crazy. And then, of course, you obviously can't see it in the podcast, but go to YouTube and you can find it somewhere. Andre rips off Hogan's T-shirt, but you're like, whatever. But he ripped off his cross.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my brother. I always reference my brother because he was my biggest wrestling partner watching as a kid, and I think actually I had my friends over too, a lot of times. But this time it was because it was on Superstars was on Saturday mornings, and my brother and I are just sitting there because he would come down, then he'd go out and play ball or whatever, and we'd sit and just he didn't even know what to say, and he hates Hogan, but he didn't even know what to say. Rip the cross off, and then Piper gets that. I'll never forget. It might be later on in that clip. Piper looks at Hogan and goes, "You're bleeding."
Mm-hmm.
Andre actually ripped Hogan's skin, taking the cross off. I mean, Andre became just such a polarizing, huge figure, and he was such a huge hero.
Yes.
It never dawned on you, if you were watching at that time, and I wish, Justin, there were times where you were watching at that time too, because you would have been blown away. It's amazing how big a character Andre was, and now he's like, Andre, why? Like, you wanted to actually, like you said, Justin, you actually wanted to strangle Bobby for doing this.
Yes.
How dare you?
And they did such a great job,
Andre
too.
like this.
Exactly. I was about to say, they did such a great job, too, making you think, Heenan really got in his head and implanted these things, which made Heenan seem even more sinister. So, yeah, it was really just great work all around. The booking was phenomenal for this whole angle. They really did nothing wrong at all. And promotion is dream. They dream of matches like this. The two biggest stars, Andre finally turns heel, finally wants that world title. Brings in the meanest, biggest dickhead manager. And Bobby was great, too, in the build-up to this. Always playing coy, talking about how they were getting the bigger belt fit, and they were, planning a celebration for that night, and how WrestleMania 3 was going to be his coming out party. He had the brand new suit. He was just tremendous in the build-up to this on Primetime and Challenge. And, Gorilla needling him the whole way, talking about how Hogan's the best, but always showing respect for Andre as well. And that's what really made this match stand out was Andre was a hated heel, but everyone respected him as a major star and a great competitor. So
right.
It wasn't like, Bobby was bringing some scrub in the ring against Hogan. This was pretty big-time stuff.
Yeah, and the funny thing is if you watch the prime times leading up to this show, like you said, Gorilla never made Andre out to be a jerk.
Right.
Like he would always say to Bobby, how dare you? Like I am now, how dare you get in this guy's head? Why are you doing this to him?
Yep.
Why are you poisoning his mind with nonsense? Like he never totally made Andre into a villain.
Right.
He made Andre and it's not a disrespect thing, but he didn't make Andre into a villain. He made Andre into a sucker. Like, how dare you do this to him?
Right.
Time could have happened. Hogan could have asked for a title shot. You could have, but obviously for TV purposes, it works perfectly. But they did just enough so where you don't make Andre out to be this evil villain.
Right.
You make him out to be a guy who just wants something, and the wrong person got in his head. And Bob Uecker as the ring announcer, one of our favorite guys.
Yes.
Who rightfully
J-Fave. Total J-Fave.
Absolutely, rightfully now in the WWE Hall of Fame. And Mary Hart. And she's funnier in WrestleMania 4, but she's there, and now everything's dark. It's nighttime now. It's probably around 6:30 on a Sunday night, 7:30 on the East Coast, so it's dark out. The lights are bright. This was the moment, man. And you're exactly right, Justin. Any promotion around the world would kill for just that setting, And seeing Andre come down and Bobby with his beautiful, and Bobby rarely wore white.
Right.
He always wore either black or he had his cool, he had his alternate blue.
I don't think he ever wore it again. I don't remember him ever wearing white.
No, I don't think he ever did either. And on primetime, he either wore black or he wore like his blue suit or whatever. He never wore white. And I liked how Gorilla called it a waiter suit. But for Bobby, you're like, this is his moment now.
Definitely.
This is his suit, and he has the guy. And people are and Andre didn't know how to act. He was still acting like a face. He was waving at the fans. It was actually pretty funny. And then Hogan walks down, and then they're standing in the ring, and I watched the match today, and the line still gives me chills. I mean, you guys may think I'm being very dramatic about it, but it's the truth. When Gorilla says, when Jesse says, and I'm surprised you don't have the clip in front of you. I figured you were looking for it, but when Jesse says this is the biggest match in the history of professional wrestling, and you know what? It still is. There's no doubt about it. He's looking for it now. You can tell. you have to forget the match part for the moment. Just the match itself. Just the moment where Andre and Hogan are just looking at each other. Not many people at that time were taller than Hogan.
No, definitely
Bundy,
not. That's a good
nobody
point.
was. And Hogan, like Jesse says, Hogan is 6'8", pretty big, pretty tall, and Andre was at least a full foot taller. I don't know if Andre was 7'5". I don't know if he was 7'5". I think he was like 7'1".
Yeah, they always announced him as being like
Bigger
7'4", and I believe it's been said actually that towards the end he was actually like 6'10" from shrinking.
Yeah, exactly, from his knee issue, from his leg problems. And I don't know if Andre ever was 525 pounds. Andre probably at his highest was maybe 480, 475. I don't think Andre ever weighed over 500 pounds.
Right, 7'4", 525. That was always what they said.
Yeah, and I don't think he was either. He was probably like 7'1", 480. But this is Vince, and we don't care. So, but again, the moment, it's not, I mean, the match itself is the match, but just that moment where the two of them are standing there, staring at each other, and Jesse just says, "This is the biggest match in the history of professional wrestling." Jesse knew what he was doing. He was no dummy. He knew this show, I think both of them did, him and Gorilla, both knew this show was going to have such historical significance. I really do think they felt that way. And Jesse was not dumb saying that. He knew that line will always be remembered. This is the biggest match in the history of professional wrestling. And he wasn't wrong. Then, of course, there was the controversy at the beginning where, and I felt bad for Gorilla because his poor son would get ripped for the next 10 months. Hogan tries to slam Andre the first, 30 seconds, falls back. Now, the camera angle that you normally see, Joey Morella's behind Andre. So, from his angle, it looks like Hogan kicks out at 2. But honestly, and this is not false. Joey Morella's hand hit 3 times.
Mm-hmm.
It did, but Hogan kicked out. So, and that was great because Bobby was able to lean on that for the next 9 months or 10 months or whatever. And then I think the match was booked perfectly. Andre beat the snot out of him, and Andre didn't need to do a lot of work rate. This is Andre.
Punches, and the match really wasn't either. I mean, a lot of people take issue with that, saying this is really, a lot of lists and whatever else lists this as one of the greatest matches of WrestleMania history. It's not. It's all in the crowd. It's all in the build-up. The match itself, like matches we'll see in future years, is blah. But you know what? It didn't matter.
No. There's not many matches that can be in a top 10 list and be mediocre from a work rate perspective. But you know what? And you'll learn this with Justin and I. We're not all about work rate all the time. It's all about the complete package. You need to have steak. I always use this analogy. You need to have steak and you need to have sizzle. And this match had a little more sizzle than steak, but you know what? For this show, for this moment, that's fine with us. Andre, all he had to do was he had those big friggin' frying pan hands, smack Hogan in the mouth, punch him in the gut, step on him, hit him in the back, just everything possible to show pain and suffering. And that's it. And then the moment, and of course Hogan, the moron he is, continues to embellish this moment more and more. At this point, what does Andre weigh now? About 8'10"?
Yes.
In Hogan's stories, as time's progressed, Andre gains like 40 pounds with every time Hogan tells a story.
And of course, Andre died immediately afterwards.
Yes, he died in the ring. He died after the 3 count. No, he died like 6 years later. But anyway, the big slam, the slam heard around the world, then the leg drop, and that was it. And that was it. And it was perfect. The package was perfect because Hogan got the win, but you still had the doubt. Andre did have.
And what a representative as the world's heavyweight champion. This is the biggest match in the history of professional wrestling.
And he wasn't wrong. And he wasn't wrong. And he delivered it like it mattered.
Yes.
And that's the greatness of Jesse. He delivered it like it mattered, like he was right, and no one could dispute it. And then of course, this is this is also the peak of the Hogan post-match posing. I mean, he posed for like 12 minutes after this match. But Andre still left the seed of doubt, and Bobby would harp on it and harp on it and harp on it and harp on it for the next 10 months.
Mm-hmm.
My guy got the win, and Joey Morella blew it.
Yes, and of course Andre would take some time off to have back surgery during this point. So he's actually out all summer. But they did keep pushing it. They did, like you said, they kept saying, Bobby would keep lobbying, saying he should have won. Um, just good stuff. Like we said, the match, nothing to write home about, obviously, but it's
No.
the moment that sells it, the crowd that sells it, the size, the meaning of what it was. And after the debacle that was WrestleMania 2, Vince really came through and delivered with WrestleMania 3.
Yes. So we get to the end, and there's not much you could say. It's A+. It's A+.
Easy, yep.
There's no doubt about it. Top to bottom, it's the perfect package. And as Justin and I said, if you listen to and I hope our good friend Rob Houston loves this podcast, because this was an easy one to do. It's an easy one to talk about. It's always easy to talk about a show that's really, really great or really, really lousy.
Mm-hmm.
WrestleMania 2 is not really, really lousy, but it's not really, really great either. It's very tough. This is cake, and I may have to grab my DVD and throw it in when I'm done. That's how much I love this show. It brings me back to my childhood of loving wrestling, and being the big red and yellow Kool-Aid drinker I was at the time, and my brother doesn't stop reminding me of that. It's just a show that it was the peak of the first great era in professional wrestling history.
Now, to truly, though, take you back to your childhood, we'd need a Gorgeous George match.
I walked into that one, I know. Thank you. It's all right. At least with you, you're creative about it instead of Derek says something about the Civil War or cavemen or something stupid. But at least you, but that's okay. Anyway, and by the way, everyone, my brother's older than me, and you'll meet him.
Impossible.
No, he is not by much, but he is, and you'll meet him when we do our college hoop podcast. But yeah, this is now the first match. This isn't my first big show that hooked me into a wrestling fan, but the first match that I ever watched that got me to love wrestling was Snuka and Morocco in the cage in 1983. But 4 years later, and seeing the product grow, and here, you just can't complain. I mean, top to bottom, it's for me still. And as much as I love future WrestleManias, 17, 26, to me, this one's still my favorite, top to bottom.
Yeah, it's a great show. I mean, you really can't complain. It did what it was supposed to do. Made WrestleMania into the spectacle. And the good thing here is Vince has some celebrities, but he learned. He doesn't rely on them overly. I think the one glaring thing in the show is, though, the lack of Paul Orndorff, who I know wasn't really a major focus anymore, but just coming off a red-hot feud with Hogan throughout 86. Just kind of weird that he's not on the show. And you wonder if he ever had any hard feelings, thinking maybe this should have been his spot. I don't think him and Hogan obviously would have sold out, like this match did. But you do wonder if he did feel, a little bit of resentment going from that red hot feud to not even being on this freaking show. I mean, the only thing I think of is if they thought something with Andre was going to go down. They were saving him in the background just in case he had to step in. But you would think he'd be on the show somewhere.
You would have figured he'd be in the tag match at the beginning involving, Orton and Morocco, or I don't know, somewhere in the show. I don't know where he would have fit. But yeah, I mean, it's very strange he's not at the show, and kind of like Morocco 2 years earlier. Yeah, I don't know. It's very strange, very strange. And seeing King Kong Bundy, fall so plummet from main event to, I mean, Bundy's a good heel. Mm-hmm. He's no Andre, in terms of putting butts in seats. Yeah, I mean, really the three moments that this show will always be remembered for: Roddy Piper wheeling off into the sunset, Savage and Steamboat, maybe one of the 2 or 3 greatest matches of all time, and the main event, which is just a seminal moment in the history of this business. Mm-hmm. Again, Justin and I don't tell you fans you have to watch something or you have to avoid something. But we do really feel, if you want to be a completist, if you're a new fan, a fan that's only been watching 5 years, 10 years, and you've never seen this show, just do it. Trust me, you will not be disappointed. You'll know what it was like back in the day to put on a perfect show. And it's the standard bearer for me of future WrestleManias and big feeling shows.
Yes.
For me.
So with that, I think we can wrap up WrestleMania 3. I think we've gushed over it as much as we need to here to really get the point across. But yeah, great show. Before we go, though, we know that this has been running a little long, but let's just hit this feedback quick from our buddy Rob, who
Sure.
is commenting on our show with Derek. It was our 2 episodes ago where we kind of hit various headlines. He said, just got done listening to the show and really enjoyed it. I agree that it does not make sense for Triple H to put up his career in Mania with only 5 weeks push, and even less now, obviously, because that was taped before this week's show. As someone who for years has thought of getting special treatment for management on his matches and title reigns due to him being married to Steph, it makes sense for him to at least get 2 months push to what will start with him dropping the belt to someone and going on to lose at WrestleMania. But I do like the idea of Shawn Michaels super kicking him as he's about to be the Undertaker. But I wonder where the story would go from there. Are there plans to bring HBK back down the line? How long do you want to push that storyline knowing HBK is not going to be a full-time guy? Good stuff, guys. Keep it up. So,
Well, again, thank you, Rob, as always.
Yes.
Well, I mean, you're probably right about the length of time. Obviously, Triple H's promo this past Monday night, he didn't give an inkling. It sounded like it in the beginning when he kept saying, there's nothing left for me to do. I've beaten everybody there is to beat. I've won 13 championships, world championships. You know, I'm surprised, though, and I'm not going to go on a rant. We've already been on long enough. We'll go through this another day. But I'm surprised that the Triple H haters, and there are plenty of them because they all yell at me, when Taker said, look in that locker room, Taker, dead man, there's no more challenges. I was waiting for some asshole to go, oh, what's he ripping all the talent in the locker room? Whoa,
There actually were another podcast I listened to where they do review Raw did get into that whole thing, feeling like a little bit like he buried, the rest of the roster by saying
for
that.
Christ's sakes, it's Taker. I mean, Jesus.
Yeah,
and you
I
know
know.
what?
I
He
get
did
it.
wrestle everybody there. He wrestled Cena. He wrestled Orton. Okay, he didn't wrestle Punk, but he's never going to wrestle Punk probably. So, you know what? Shut the hell up. You know what? I'm going to be I'm usually pretty good about, and we have a guy on, a wonderful guy on our message board, Triple Hermit, who's just as big a Triple H fan as I am. And it's nice to have some support because a lot of times I don't have any. But although Justin's usually Switzerland when it comes to Triple H, he's usually a diplomat. But I'm going to be very defensive about it now because it's the truth. Obviously, Taker feels that there wasn't a big match at this show, so the only other guy that was left that could have added something sizzling to this show is Triple H. So, you know what? Stick it.
All right, well,
It's just my part.
we'll cut that off there, Rob. Thanks for the feedback, but we
Thank you,
will
Rob, as always.
we'll definitely expound on that more in our next headline show, which we'll probably do maybe later next week. But upcoming, just to give you a quick plug, next week we are going to have our Big East tournament preview. And then the week following, we're going to do a Selection Sunday preview as well. We're going to do that the night that the tournament brackets are released. Yes. We have our all-star panel. Our hoops experts will be on. And in between, we're going to try and we'll try and do another pay-per-view review, maybe another headline show as well. So if there's anything you want to hear us talk about, like Rob asked, for more Rock Cena talk, and we delivered it. So if there's anything else you want to hear, hit us up at Place to Be Podcast on Facebook. You can just put that in the search bar, and it'll come right up. Or at our email address, placetobepodcast@gmail.com. So I hope you guys are enjoying the show. And, we want to keep cranking these out. I feel like our last few have been our best. Again, listen to that John Walters interview. I hope you enjoyed this. Our next one will be Survivor Series 87. And to bring us out, and hopefully it finally will work this time, we have the number one song, the week of WrestleMania 3, on the chart. So we're going to go out with that. For my PIC, Scott Criscolo, I am Justin Rosero. Place to Be Nation. Have a great night, and thanks for listening.